They just don't make them like that anymore. Greetings and welcome once again to Roman of the Empire. I am your host, Roman. I got to see Conan, the Barbarian, 1982 film in theater, in the big theater, with the big screen and the big sound and all the stuff. And it was fantastic. Conan, again, 1982. This was its 40th anniversary screening, put out by Fathom. They do those special movies events. Directed by John Milius, written by John Milius and Oliver Stone. Yes, that Oliver Stone. And Robert E. Howard gets credit for creating the character. A De Laurentiis production, music by Basil Poldoris, and the music is so good, so big in the theater. It's just fantastic. And the cinematography by Duke Callaghan, who did Jeremiah Johnson at Miami Vice, for those of you who remember that. And cinematography in this film is just so well done. Conan is an epic film, epic, big scale movies like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments. I mean, it's that kind of scale of film. And it was one of the first, and I would say arguably the best of the large scale fantasy movies of the 1980s. This started the trend where you saw movies like Beastmaster. Red Sonja, which wasn't bad, also had Schwarzeneger in it. Sword and the Sorcerer, and a lot of lesser known fantasy films. There were a ton of them, but this one was the best for a lot of different reasons. And and not the smallest part is the story itself. It's more than an adventure story. It's a story about loss, struggle, friendship, loyalty, love, and vengeance. That's what drives Conan really on his journey through the film. Here we have the poster from back in the day. So Conan is from a small village. His father is a sword maker. And here we're seeing him tell Conan the story of steel and how the god Crom basically got swindled out of it. The other gods had it and then forgot about it, left it on the battlefield. And you can tell the man loves what he does. He's a sword maker and a warrior. But as the case often in these films, something bad happens, and that something bad is Thulsa Doom. And he's basically just a warlord at this point, raiding villages, and you don't really know the why of it. It's just, bad men come and they do bad things, and they come to kill everybody, take his dad's sword. His mother's trying to protect him. Thulsa Doom has this just look. James Earl Jones is so good in this role. And again, we look at filmmaking today where you have, kind of forced diversity. We didn't think twice about James Earl Jones being in this movie. All you knew was that you had a great actor in a great movie. And look at the detail as well, just on the armor, on the swords. His two lead henchmen in the back here. It was just such solid work. So Thulsa Doom has this ability, he can, entrance people. And he does that to Conan's mother, and off comes the head. Unfortunate. It's an unfortunate business. So he gets sold into, or well, not even sold, just put into slavery. And he's pushing this big freaking wheel from the time he's just a tiny, a child of what, 7 or 8 there, until he's in his early 20s or so. And he just becomes this big hulking man. So he's the last one pushing the wheel. And then he's handed over to the gentleman with the red beard here, and he becomes a gladiator. And he gets thrown into the mix, and he really doesn't know what's going on at first. He doesn't understand. He just follows directions because that's what he's been told to do. It's like, but he's thrown in this fight with this guy with these sharp teeth, and it's quite brutal. And all the gladiator scenes are very brutal. They're very realistic, much more so than the super choreographed things today. These are just getting in there and beating your enemy to death, slashing them, using whatever tools you have. It's incredible. It's just so well done. And is it gratuitous? Maybe, but the point of it is you see what Conan is going through. And eventually he gets to the point where his master lets him read and learn and not just be, a beast of burden for him. Though, I mean, that's essentially what he is. And and this is Arnold. His grasp of English wasn't fantastic at this point, so he doesn't have a ton of speaking parts, but he doesn't really need them either. And you just you get everything gets conveyed through a lot of it is just looks. You see what's going on in the scene, but he doesn't need to speak a lot to get his point across. And he's excellent in this role, man. I mean, I would say one of his best roles. You have flashy movies like Terminator and stuff, but this really captures a lot. And I did want to talk a little bit. We talked about The Village, the look of the movie, every location, the production design in this is just superb. It's all done in Spain, which is interesting. But the production design itself is so. Everything looks different. Every location has a look that it needs to have. And then the polished areas look fantastic, and the village looks dirty, lived in. It looks very organic. All of the stuff in this movie does. Something about that era, they just were able to capture that type of thing very well. And so he gets freed ultimately by his master. And the way they stated it's like he's a dog who's been held for too long. So his master's like, okay, I need to let it go. And he does. And he's not quite sure what to do. So he's running. You find him. He's got his chain still on his leg. He's running. He's being chased by these dogs. And he finds his burial mound. And he falls down into the burial mound where he sees this figure on the throne. And he correlates it with the god Crom, of course. And he takes the sword and smashes the rust off of it and goes outside and begins his journey. And the scene in the burial mound is one of my favorites. It's not very long, but it's a very powerful scene as he just kind of has this transformation when he comes out, cuts the chain off his leg, and the dogs are coming towards him, and it's going to happen, but they don't feel the need to carry on with that. And then he meets this weird witchy lady who kind of gives him prophecy type stuff about who he is, what he's going to do. Of course, he has to pay a price, and you can maybe imagine what that is with weird witchy lady. But he ends up tossing her in the fire and carrying on. But on his way out, he meets a character. Lord, I've lost it. Forgive me. Subutai. He's a thief. He's an archer, and he's chained up very close to where Witchy Lady was. And they start a conversation, and he's like, "Well, I need food. Give me food." He's like, "Why? What? What did you do?" And he's like, "I'm a thief." He's like, "What are you here for?" "Well, food for the wolves." Not so good. So they join up forces and they go off and they have adventures. And there's a lot of cardio in this movie. There's a lot of running. And what that's doing, it's showing passage of time, of course. And they do take their time with it. It's nothing in this movie feels rushed. And you could argue some of these scenes take too long. That's okay. The shots themselves are very well done. Again, we talk about the cinematography. And taking your time with a shot, it conveys a part of the story that if you just jump from scene to scene, okay, now they're entering the village. You don't see the voyage to the village. Do you have to? No. Does it add another layer to the story? Yeah, of course it does. And you get that in this movie. And here we are at the village. And this is a funny scene because Conan's never really been out in the town. He's been to towns, of course, because he's doing his fighting and everything there, but he's never really done it. So I don't say he's like a bumpkin, but so he's trying all the food, and the guy's like, "You don't know how old that is," and it's funny, and you also feel the bond between them building. You don't get a ton of backstory in it, but you don't need it, and that's something theater today likes to do. Is you get everything about a character, in the first 15 minutes of a movie that you don't really need. He's a thief and an archer, and Conan freed him, and they've developed a friendship. And that's all you really need to know. So on their journey, they meet up with, you don't know her name at first. It's Valeria, also a thief. And Conan and Subutai are they're going to climb this tower that has all these snakes on top of it. The snake theme is important. So when Conan's village got raided, they had a standard with two snakes that were one, but two heads facing each other. And Conan's been chasing that since he got free. He's always looking for the snakes. He's always looking for the snakes. So there's this tower, and they get the news from one of the villagers. It's full of treasure, and the eye of the serpent is the most important one. And so she's going to rob it as well. And she's like, dudes, you don't even have any rope. What are you doing? So they get in there. And apparently when they get to the top, there's like a terrible stench coming up. And you don't know what that is at first, but then you get into the den here, and there's a big effing snake. It's like an unnaturally big snake. And you don't even know if it's real at first, because they're just kind of in the chamber, getting their jewels, stealing the stuff. He picks up the eye of the serpent, which you see there, and then the snake comes to life. And the scene with the snake is really good, really brutal. It's really gross, but it's fine. So this young lass here is about to throw herself into the pit to sacrifice to herself to the snake, but Conan has lopped off its head, and oh my, now they know they're there. So they run out. Hilarity ensues. There's some more violence, but they just made off with a bunch of riches. So they're happy, enjoying themselves, maybe a little too much. And they are summoned. And this scene is also fantastic. Max Van Sydow in just a little tiny role as King Ostrich. And he's like, they came and they threatened me because you broke into their tower. Threaten me. And then he congratulates them because he hates the snake people. And they were the first ones that actually ever did anything. Everyone else was always too scared. They were too dumb. But so his daughter is with Thulsa Doom, the bad guy. He used to be hers. And he's not having it. He's like, I'm going to give you basically all the wealth you want, enough to become kings yourself to go get her. He's like, in the end, none of the riches matter. It's just a father's love for his child. Right? Touching. And so Valeria and Subutai don't want to go. They're like, let's just take the riches we have and get out of here. I don't want to end up getting killed for this. But Conan's like, I have to find the snake. I have to find this and avenge my village, my family. That's where he's coming from. And Valeria's really sad to see him go because she finally has something. She actually has someone whom she loves, and they have wealth together. You don't really see how long they're together. I don't actually think it's that long, but for story's sake. So he goes off on his own to do what he needs to do. Here we are. They're having their lecture from the king. And so Conan leaves and he meets the wizard, Mako. Mako he's a funny character, but it's not ridiculous humor. He's just an oddball dude. And Conan's like, he's trying to figure out where to go, where Thulsa Doom is. And he meets Mako along the way. And he gives him a little bit of guidance. He doesn't really know who he is, but Conan leaves his sword with him and goes off to join the cult to basically, to infiltrate. And none of this comes off as like goofy. It just comes off as very genuine. It's a very organic feeling film. And again, the costumes in this are just so good. His armor, the wizard's just wonky looking cloak. He looks like a wild man. I mean, and he lives in this, it's almost like a city of the dead, where there was obviously a big battle. He got the skeletons set up with their armor on all around this, we'll call it a city of the dead. And it's just so cool. And the city of the dead plays a really keen part later on in the film. So he's meeting with this priest who has other ideas for him. He kicks his ass, takes his robe, and infiltrates. Well, as you might suspect, it doesn't go well for him. Thulsa Doom figures it out, and he talks to him about the riddle of steel. It's like, do you know what the riddle of steel is? And I'll tell you, it's not the steel, it's the hand that wields it. And he calls to one of the girls to come to me, my child, come to me. And she kills herself. She throws herself off the balcony she's on. And that's power. That's strength. What is steel compared to that? Okay. That's an interesting thought. So here he is, Conan getting his ass handed to him because he wasn't prepared for this. Unfortunate. Well, he went in with, kind of a head full of vengeance. That's clouding your judgment. And he went in by himself. He didn't have his team with him. So he gets nailed to a tree. And this scene is also really good. He's up here for what there's clearly a passage of time, days. The vultures start feeding off of him. And they've nailed him. And I know it's hard to see it in the pictures. They've actually nailed him to this tree. Yikes. And eventually, Subutai comes along and rescues him and takes him back to the wizard. Now, when they get back there, Valeria is there as well. And the wizard paints him up, and it's a spell that the spirits will come and heal him, but they extract a price. And Valeria's like, I'll pay the price. I'll pay the price. Okay. And that comes back to haunt later. Look at the detail on this, though. So they paint his face up, and this is actually taken from folk stuff. I believe it's in the Japanese region. I believe that's not a for sure. I saw some of the behind the scenes stuff, but it just kind of went past me. And there's chanting, and there's this wind, and this is where when I say I have a minor complaint, it's very minor. It's effects of the time, though. When the spirits come, they're clearly animated. And that can be done a lot better today, but it's not, you don't really think too much about it. It's still, the scene still works very well. And, they come and they heal him, and he gets his strength back, and now they're going in as a team. And I love the paint that they did. A lot of people have complaints about it. I think it looks cool to camouflage themselves in the shadows. And they talked to Conan about, we're going in to get the girl. It's not a vengeance mission because you saw what happened last time. It didn't go well, and it didn't go well. So now they go in to rescue the girl, and there's some real horrors in the Thulsa Doom stronghold. There are bodies gutted, hanging there like pigs, and there's cannibalism. They're making like people soup, and it's just very bizarre and freaky. And Thulsa Doom on his throne. And this is the princess that they are coming to rescue. And Thulsa Doom, this is a really neat scene as well. And me just showing you pictures doesn't do it justice. But if I show you the scene, I'm going to get a copyright strike. Transforms into this snake, like literally. That's one of his powers. And I loved everything about this from when they came in. There's a lot of like gross stuff. But again, it's supposed to be there. So you understand that while they have all this beautiful thing, they also have right beneath the surface, there's something else, the evil that is what Thulsa Doom represents. And it's not like Conan is a clean character. He's not, a white hat protagonist. He's a gladiator, a thief, a killer. But in context, he's the good guy. So the princess doesn't want to leave. They kind of have to make her go, and it gets pretty messy as they fight off the bad guys. And it's a really wonderful scene to watch. And they're kind of taking in everything that's going on. There's an orgy happening around all of this as well. So it's not particularly graphic. So at least you're not subjected to that. So it doesn't take away. But they're all like, wow, that's something. But this is before they bring out the big pot of human stew. And so they get the girl, they get out, And then this really neat scene happens where Thulsa Doom takes a snake and makes an arrow out of it and shoots it into Valeria. Well, shit. And she gives this good speech about, while she's dying, of course. Oh, it's before. I'm sorry. It's when I'm backtracking. When Conan was dying, when he's all wrapped up like the mummy there, she says, if you were alive and I was dead and you were fighting, I would come back from hell to fight by your side. It's nice. And then this happens. So she dies, and he makes a funeral pyre for her. And this is a very moving scene. Like I said, Arnold doesn't really talk much, but he conveys it through his actions and what, his expression. He's not just a big dumb ape, like, he comes across, but he's not. This is a superb role for him. And the funeral pyre, the fire isn't supposed to burn where this is, but he makes it work anyway. And Subutai is down with the wizard, and Subutai is crying. He's like, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "Because, oops, I went back a little too far. Because he cannot. So I cry for him." Nice, right? So Crazy Princess Girl is up on the rock here, and she's like, "They're going to come for you because they saw that fire. They know what's going to happen." And of course they do. Now, what comes next is what I call the A-Team scene. So again, they've got this city of the dead that the wizard lives in, and it's all basically just rocks. It's not like Stonehenge. That's a bad example. There are these upright rocks and just all these places to hide, and it's not a big space to have a fight. Almost, think like Thermopylae as far as they can use this to their advantage. So they go through and they set up, traps, weapon stashes for themselves. It's like you're, in a first-person shooter going through and you know where things are. So that when this big force comes through, they can use this space to their advantage. This is another one of my favorite scenes. The way it is filmed is fantastic. You really get the intimacy of the battle in this scene. And Conan actually makes a trap for one of the guys. I don't think I have this still. But you remember the thing in Predator, which was the big spike that flung around and was supposed to impale, and the Predator was like, "Nah." But it's a really similar thing, and I thought it was kind of funny seeing it, and I completely forgot about that. So the bad guys come just as they're going to, and they use this space, and it's just such a great scene. The fighting in this, when I said we talked about choreographed earlier, but this is choreographed just perfect for the size and the area they're fighting in. So you get the one-on-one fights, and it doesn't seem ridiculous because they kind of have to. They can't fit a lot of people in this space. It simply doesn't work. And so, yeah, they pop out and they take on the bad guys one-on-one because they don't know where they are. And like I said, you can't get a lot of folks in here. And it's really well done. Really well done. I props to the both the director, the director, the cinematographer, and the person who set all of this stuff up. I don't know if this was an actual place or not, or if this was a set that they constructed. I mean, obviously they built things around it, but it was perfect, absolutely perfect. And so remember, so Conan's fighting, and Valeria, as good as her word, she's only there for a second, but she comes back to fight by his side and doesn't come off as cheesy or weird. It's there for a second and then it's gone. It gives him the chance he needs to beat the bad guys. It's just about perfect. Just about perfect. And the battle scene itself, it's 2 hours and 9 minutes. The movie goes by fast. It doesn't feel like it's that long a movie. Of course, by today's standards, it's a short movie because they feel the need to make everything like super long, but they don't really need to. So Thulsa Doom just got his ass handed to him. And that's not happened to him before. He's never taken on someone like Conan. So all of his primary henchmen are dead. He just lost the girl. And he's given this big speech to his followers. And they, they're, of course, all, everybody basically, it's a death cult. Their whole purpose in life is to die in his service. He's given this big, long-winded speech, and Conan comes up, and Thulsa Doom tries to put him in a trance, just like he did his mother, talking about how he is basically his father. But if it weren't for him, what would Conan be? It's because of him that he's strong, because of him that he has this sense of purpose. And Conan starts to look like he's falling under his trance. Then you just see it on his face. And he swings that sword, and off comes the noggin. Whoops, didn't see that coming. And so the followers just start putting out their torches, and off they go. And this scene, and just a lot of the scenes around Thulsa Doom, there are, I don't know if it's 1,000 people. It's a huge cast that you had to feed and find wardrobe for, all the stuff. It's a massive cast, though, because they don't have CGI. It's not like Lord of the Rings where they're able to produce these armies. And I'm not taking anything against Lord of the Rings. That's one of the best done, certainly modern epics. And the way they use CGI worked well. Other movies use it, and it comes off as clunky. Lord of the Rings, it doesn't. But this movie, just like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, had to use real people, and there are a lot of them. So off comes the head. Thulsa Doom's defeated. His cult basically just collapses around him. And here you see it. All of these people out there, it's just really, really impressive. And like I said, they start extinguishing their torches, and then off they go. And then you get the last scene is filled with narration again. The wizard, who's the narrator, does the Conan went on to win more battles and have adventures and become king by his own hand. But that's another story. And we've never gotten that story. Now, they did do a movie called Conan the Destroyer, which I don't recommend. It's got Grace Jones in it, who was very popular at the time. Wilt Chamberlain, the basketball player, who's a giant compared to Arnold, is in it. It's not good. It's not a good movie. Don't see it. But if you have the chance to see Conan the Barbarian in any format, granted, you're probably not going to get to see it on the big screen. Rent it, stream it, whatever you need to do. But if you haven't seen this movie, see it. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, watch it again. Because like I said, it holds up very well. More than you probably remember. So give it a go. It's worth your time. And there, like I said, I wanted to talk about this movie because it's a movie from 1982, which was a magic year for movie. I'm probably going to do a stream on that year alone one of these days because so many good movies came out of it. They knew how to make films, not just throw a bunch of shit together, throw it at the screen and see what sticks. You have two writers. That's how you get a good story. It's a focused story. You don't have 10 writers, everybody trying to get their agenda in. You have a couple guys honing a story and making it freaking epic. And that's all I have to say about that. So anyway, get out there and see this movie if you haven't seen it. And man, it was seeing on the big screen. They do this with other movies too. If there's something out there you want to watch, keep an eye on Fathom, because who knows what you might see. Who knows what you might see? And it is a very different viewing experience. Seeing it as intended, hearing it as intended. So that's Conan. This has been Roman of the Empire signing off. Please like and subscribe if you haven't, because God knows the channel needs it. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas, because it's Christmas time when I'm filming. Be kind.